Hey there. Today, we delve into the astonishing story of a single aircraft that changed the course of World War II in the Pacific. The legendary Japanese Zero fighter, whose sleek design hid deadly vulnerabilities waiting to be exploited. Imagine a plane so agile it outmaneuvered entire fleets, yet so fragile that a single bullet could spell its doom. How did this symbol of Japanese air power come to be both a marvel of engineering and a ticking time bomb? Could a tiny flaw in its fuel system or the absence of armor turn the tide against its invincibility? And what secrets did the Allies uncover after capturing its wreckage? Secrets that would redefine aerial combat forever. What if the very design choices meant that beneath its blazing speed and sharp turns lay a fatal weakness, one that American pilots learned to turn against it? Could a piece of wreckage from a marsh in Alaska hold the key to winning the skies over Guadalcanal and beyond? How did the discovery of this aircraft's flaws lead to the development of the F-6F Hellcat, America's ultimate fighter, and shift the balance of power in the Pacific? All these questions converge on one remarkable truth. The Zero's story is not just about a plane, but about strategy, innovation, and the deadly cost of prioritizing speed over safety. The secrets hidden in its fragile frame would become weaponized knowledge, an intelligence breakthrough that would help the Allies turn the tide of the war. And right now, as we explore the fascinating details of its design, destruction, and the vital lessons learned, the most astonishing revelations are just beginning. The real battle, between invincibility and vulnerability, starts now. On July 10, in the year 1942, the remote and often treacherous Akutan Island, nestled within the vast expanse of the Alaska Territory, became the focal point of a discovery that would carry profound implications for the ongoing Pacific theater of World War II. As the sun filtered weakly through the thick layers of fog that enshrouded the marshy landscape, machinist mate Albert Knack's binoculars shook ever so slightly, betraying the intensity of his focus and the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Through the observation window of the PBY Catalina patrol aircraft, he scrutinized the terrain below, his eyes fixed on what appeared to be an extraordinary sight. The unmistakable bright red circles, the rising sun insignia, adorned the wings of the aircraft sprawled amid the wet grasses, confirming it was a Japanese Zero fighter, astonishingly perched upside down and seemingly intact after what had to have been a crash. Lieutenant William Thez, who was in command of the patrol plane, had found himself lost amidst the dense fog banks drifting over the Aleutian Islands. Using dead reckoning, he managed to reorient himself over the Shyman Islands, and without delay, he selected what was, by all accounts, the most direct route back to Dutch Harbor, flying straight over Akutan Island. This route, seldom traversed by Allied planes, was fraught with danger and rarely taken. Yet, it was precisely this unusual pathway that would alter the very trajectory of the Pacific War, revealing secrets that could shift the balance in favor of the Allies. Initially, both men dismissed the possibility that such a prize could be nearby. After all, no Japanese pilot would leave behind such a formidable aircraft, especially one that had become a symbol of Japanese air superiority. For over a year, the Zero fighter had haunted the Pacific skies, a mysterious and formidable weapon that had effortlessly decimated American, British, and Chinese air forces alike. It was a machine that seemed almost invincible, a product of Japanese industrial ingenuity that outclassed land-based interceptors and outmaneuvered every opposition. The Zero's ascendance had been marked by a series of astonishing victories, from the attack on Pearl Harbor, through battles in the Philippines, across the rugged terrains of Burma and Malaya, where it had earned a fearsome reputation. The Zero fighter's dominance was built on a set of design principles so effective that they seemed almost revolutionary. Swift, highly maneuverable, and equipped with a remarkable range, it redefined aerial combat in the Pacific. Early encounters over China, where the Zero faced obsolete Soviet-built fighters, saw it achieve kill ratios reaching as high as 12-1. In April of 1942, a formidable Japanese strike force comprising 36 Zeros launched an attack that resulted in the downing of 27 British aircraft for the loss of only 5 Japanese planes, a testament to its lethal capabilities. The official American response upon confronting a Zero was straightforward and stark: retreat. To engage directly in a dogfight was considered suicidal, an act of bravado with little chance of success. Orders were clear: avoid close-range combat whenever possible. This strategy was grounded not in cowardice but in deadly practicality, rooted in the cold mathematics of aerial warfare. American fighters attempting to turn with the Zero or match its agile maneuvers often found themselves at a fatal disadvantage, their chances of survival slim to none. The Zero's superior speed, agility, and range made it a nearly unstoppable predator when faced head-on, and pilots who tried conventional combat tactics often paid with their lives, rarely returning to report their failures. This stark reality was underscored on June 4, 1942, the very day of the decisive Battle of Midway, situated just 1,500 meters to the south. As part of Japan's intricate operation to seize the strategic Midway Atoll, a diversionary force was dispatched to attack the Aleutian Islands in an effort to divert American attention away from the main assault. Among the Japanese personnel involved in this diversion was a young flight petty officer named Tadayoshi Koga, just 19 years old, who had flown from the Japanese carrier Ryujo as part of the complex and carefully coordinated military maneuver. Little did they know that this unexpected discovery in the marshy outskirts of Akutan Island would soon become one of the most valuable and paradoxical finds of the war. The aircraft they were about to recover held the potential not only to challenge the prevailing assumptions about Japanese aerial technology but also to illuminate the deeper intricacies of aircraft design during this tumultuous era. What they uncovered would ultimately reveal a paradox, one that would be etched into the annals of history, not merely in technical manuals but in the lives saved and the victories achieved through a single, startling piece of intelligence. The reputation of the Zero fighter had been built on an unshakable foundation of fear and respect. Since its debut in 1941, it had transformed the aerial combat landscape across the Pacific and had become a symbol of Japanese military prowess. Its impressive speed, in the aftermath of a fierce air confrontation near Dutch Harbor, a Japanese Zero fighter, with the serial number 4593, found itself embroiled in a desperate struggle. This aircraft was part of a 3-plane formation assigned to carry out a daring strafing attack against the American naval base situated on an island in Alaska. Led by Lieutenant Tadayoshi Koga, the formation included his wingman, Chief Petty Officer Makoto Endo and Petty Officer Sugo Shikarda, who descended upon their target with relentless force. During the attack, the Japanese pilots managed to shoot down an American PBY-5A Catalina flying boat and aggressively strafed the shipwrecked survivors struggling in the icy waters. However, amidst the chaos, Koga's aircraft came under enemy ground fire. A single bullet struck the Zero's oil line, causing a rupture that was initially not immediately catastrophic but would prove fatal within minutes. Oil from the engine was relentlessly sprayed into the cold Alaskan air, gradually depriving the aircraft of vital lubrication. Approximately 25 miles east of Dutch Harbor lay Akutan Island, a location carefully designated by Japanese military planners as an emergency landing site. Offshore, A Japanese submarine was stationed specifically for the purpose of rescuing pilots who lost their way or were forced to crash land. As Koga's aircraft's oil pressure indicator plummeted, he communicated with his wingman, signaling his intention to head toward Akuten. From an aerial vantage point, the landing site appeared promising. The grassy expanse, roughly half a mile inland from Broadbite, looked solid and inviting, an ideal place for an emergency landing. Shikarda, circling above in his aircraft, suddenly noticed a glinting shimmer beneath the grass. To his horror, he realized that what looked like solid ground was actually marshland, a treacherous, waterlogged terrain. He attempted to signal Koga to abort the landing and make a belly landing instead, but it was already too late. Koga had committed to a conventional approach, lowering his landing gear in the hope of a safe touchdown. As the Zero's wheels made contact with the soft, marshy grass, they immediately sank into the yielding mud below. The aircraft pitched violently forward, flipping end over end in a brutal roll. When it finally came to rest, it was upside down, with the wings and fuselage remarkably intact despite the violent crash. Inside the inverted cockpit, Tadayoshi Koga was killed instantly, his neck broken by the force of the impact. Meanwhile, Endo and Shikarda circled overhead, torn by a profound internal conflict. Their orders were explicit. Any Japanese aircraft that crash-landed in enemy territory had to be destroyed to prevent enemy capture of sensitive technology. The aircraft's valuable secrets and technological capabilities were considered too critical to fall into enemy hands. Yet, the pilots hesitated, knowing Koga might still be alive inside the wreckage, and they could not bring themselves to fire upon their fallen comrade. After several agonizing reconnaissance circles, with their fuel supplies dwindling and worsening weather closing in, they made the difficult decision to retreat westward toward their carrier, believing that a Japanese submarine nearby would soon reach Koga's position. For hours, the submarine searched the area, but it was eventually driven away by the USS Williamson, an American destroyer patrolling the waters. Koga's body remained trapped inside the cockpit, undisturbed in the quiet marshland. Unseen from the usual flight routes and concealed by the thick fog and persistent rain, the wreckage of the Zero lay in its marshy hiding place, a silent testament to the brutal clash. Days turned into weeks, and the conditions kept the wreck concealed from discovery. Then, on a mist-laden morning, lieutenant thieves of the American Navy spotted what appeared to be a small aircraft through a break in the thick clouds. The sighting prompted a rescue mission. On July the 11th, a recovery team led by lieutenant thieves returned to the site with a small landing party, cautiously approaching the submerged aircraft with weapons at the ready, unsure of what they would find. Among them was Chief Aviation Pilot William Scarber, an experienced Navy flyer assigned to oversee the recovery. Carefully wading through the marsh clumps, Scarber reached the overturned Zero and peered inside the cockpit. There, still strapped into the pilot's seat, was the body of Tadayoshi Koga, frozen in death. The team stood in solemn silence, gazing at the wreckage of the aircraft that had once terrorized enemy ships and defenses. The recovery of Koga's body and the aircraft itself marked the end of a bitter chapter, finally allowing the Allies to secure a piece of the fierce aerial combat that had played out over the icy waters and marshlands of Alaska. A team of American pilots and specialists, having traveled across the vast expanse of the Pacific, laid eyes upon a single, extraordinary relic of wartime history, an intricately damaged yet undeniably elegant Zero fighter plane. Despite the intense deterioration and damage it had sustained, the aircraft still carried an almost predatory grace, a silent testament to the design mastery of its creators. Its sleek, flowing lines, paired with a minimalist approach to protrusions or unnecessary ornamentation, conveyed a sense of swift motion and agility, almost whispering of the speed it once commanded in the skies. The team members dedicated themselves to photographing every conceivable angle of the wreckage. Every crack, dent, and twisted metal surface was meticulously documented, capturing the aircraft's form before any attempt at salvage or recovery. These visual records would serve as crucial references for analysis and reconstruction in the days to come. Among them, Koga's body was carefully removed from the cockpit, given a respectful Christian burial nearby. Despite the ongoing conflict between their nations, the soldiers recognized the honorable status of Koga as a brave warrior, deserving of dignity even in death. With the initial fervor of discovery behind them, the team shifted focus to the next vital step: in-depth examination of the fighter's structural integrity. They moved with cautious precision, scrutinizing every detail of the Zero's broken frame. What they observed in those initial hours would carry as much significance as the test flights planned for the future, revealing secrets about its construction, materials, and combat resilience. The aircraft itself was astonishing in its lightness, not only in overall weight but in each individual component. The fuselage, under their fingers, felt unnervingly thin, almost fragile. When Scarborough gently tapped the metal surface, a hollow tone responded, reminiscent of a tin can rather than the sturdy shell expected of a fighter aircraft. Such a revelation raised immediate questions about its durability in combat. The inspection revealed the absence of armor protections typical of modern fighters. There was no armor plating surrounding the cockpit, and the windscreen consisted solely of standard transparent panels, lacking any reinforced or armored glass. The fuel tanks, similarly, were basic aluminum containers with no self-sealing capability or protective bladders designed to swell shut in case of puncture, features standard in contemporary American and Allied aircraft. This stark contrast to the heavily armored fighters of the Allies highlighted a fundamental difference in design philosophy and technological approach. This realization was troubling. It defied the conventional wisdom held by American aircraft engineers and strategists, who believed that survivability in combat depended heavily on protective features. Armor behind the pilot's seat, resilient windscreen glass, and self-sealing fuel tanks. These innovations, though adding significant weight, greatly increased pilot survivability. The Zero, however, seemed to lack these critical safety features, suggesting a different set of priorities or technological limitations. Recovery efforts faced considerable hurdles. The first 3 attempts were thwarted by the notorious weather conditions of the area, with quick-moving storms and thick fog often impairing visibility and complicating logistics. On July 12, a team led by Lieutenant Robert Kerms succeeded in providing Koga with a proper burial, replacing the hurried grave made earlier. That same day, they attempted to recover the aircraft, but the rough weather caused the ship tasked with transport to lose its anchors, delaying progress further. Finally, on July 15, a barge managed to reach the site, and workers constructed a makeshift sledge to haul the Zero across marshy terrain toward the beach. Despite the waterlogged and battered state of the aircraft, its remarkable lightness made it manageable. 6 men, working in concert, were able to maneuver the damaged plane with relative ease. The aircraft was then carefully loaded onto the USS St. Me, a process that involved meticulous planning, and transported across the open water to the safety of Seattle, arriving on the first day of August. From there, the Zero journeyed by barge to the Naval Air Station at North Island, near San Diego, California. The entire trip took nearly a month, during which time American intelligence analysts scrutinized the photographs taken during recovery, debating the aircraft's construction and capabilities. Once at North Island, the Zero was placed under strict 24-hour military police guard. This was not merely to prevent acts of sabotage or theft, although those concerns existed, but primarily to stop souvenir hunters from dismantling the legendary fighter piece by piece. Every mechanic, pilot, and engineer who arrived at the aircraft's vicinity was eager to claim a fragment of the Japanese masterpiece, an artifact of war that represented a different philosophy of aerial combat. The guard's orders were clear: anyone attempting unauthorized contact would face armed resistance. Navy mechanics embarked on the painstaking process of repairing and restoring the aircraft. Experienced technicians, well-versed in aircraft construction and maintenance, began to analyze every detail, eager to understand the Zero's design secrets. Their work promised to reveal not only the technological innovations employed by Japanese engineers but also the strategic implications of this fighter's unique features and performance characteristics. As the inspection team approached the legendary Zero, they did so with a blend of sheer professional curiosity and a healthy dose of suspicion. For years, rumors had circulated that Japanese aircraft, including this famed fighter, were merely crude imitations of Western designs, assembled with inferior materials and characterized by clumsy, slipshod craftsmanship. Such propaganda had successfully fostered an expectation that what awaited them would be a clumsy, poorly executed copy, a mere shadow of true aviation excellence. However, what they discovered in reality was nothing short of astonishing. The Zero turned out to be an extraordinary feat of engineering, a true masterpiece of weight reduction and structural efficiency. Every element of its construction seemed to reflect meticulous design choices aimed squarely at minimizing weight without sacrificing strength or performance. The main wing spars, for instance, were crafted from an advanced lightweight alloy called superduralumin, an aluminum alloy reinforced with zinc that had been developed by Sumitomo Metal Industries back in 1936. This alloy was distinctive because it combined zinc with aluminum to produce a material that was significantly lighter and stronger than the standard aircraft-grade aluminum used by Western manufacturers, although it did have a susceptibility to corrosion. The Japanese engineers had ingeniously addressed this vulnerability by applying an anti-corrosive zinc chromate coating after fabrication, showcasing a level of metallurgy that was on par with, or even ahead of, contemporary American capabilities. Further structural ingenuity was evident in the design choices aimed at reducing overall weight. For example, the wing attachment fittings were kept to a minimum by permanently bonding the wings directly to the fuselage, effectively eliminating the need for large, removable joints traditionally used for maintenance and assembly. The tail section was also designed with simplicity and weight savings in mind. The aft fuselage was engineered to detach just behind the cockpit, facilitating easier repairs without adding unnecessary bulk to the aircraft's forward structure. The placement of the engine near the wing's leading edge contributed to the fighter's overall balance, allowing for a shorter and lighter tail assembly. The control surfaces, the ailerons, elevators, and rudders, were covered with fabric, a lighter alternative to the heavier metal used in American designs. Even the landing gear struts were narrower, contributing further to the lightweight construction ethos. The cockpit framework was kept deliberately minimalistic, providing excellent visibility for the pilot but offering no protective armor, a stark contrast to the heavily armored cockpits of many Western fighters. During the repair process, technicians carefully straightened the bent vertical stabilizer, rudder, wing tips, flaps, and canopy, all of which had sustained damage during the crash. The landing gear struts, sheared off during the incident, were entirely replaced. The three-bladed propeller, manufactured by Sumitomo, was carefully cleaned, dressed, and reused, demonstrating Japanese craftsmanship's resilience, damaged yet still serviceable. As the team took detailed measurements and conducted weighings, they found that the aircraft, designated as the A6M2, had a fully loaded weight of approximately 5,555 pounds. To put that into perspective, they recalled that the American Grumman F-4F Wildcat, which served as the United States Navy's primary carrier-based fighter, weighed around 7,426 pounds when fully loaded. The Zero was thus lighter by about 1,871 pounds, a significant difference that directly impacted its performance capabilities. This weight disparity was not accidental, it was a result of meticulous engineering focus on reducing mass. The Zero's Nakajima Sake 12-cylinder radial engine produced around 950 horsepower, whereas the Wildcat's Pratt & Whitney R1830 twin Wasp engine generated approximately 1,200 horsepower, providing a 25% horsepower advantage to the American aircraft. Despite this, the Zero's drastically lower weight meant that it could outmaneuver the Wildcat in many respects, thanks to superior power-to-weight ratio and lower wing loading. The Zero's wing loading measured roughly 24.3 pounds per square foot, while the Wildcat carried about 28.6 pounds per square foot. This lower wing loading translated into the ability to turn more tightly, climb faster, and execute more aggressive maneuvers. In dogfights where agility and quickness often determined the outcome, physics favored the Zero decisively, granting it an apparent, almost insurmountable edge over its adversary. However, as the engineers proceeded to scrutinize the aircraft's fuel system, a concern arose that troubled them deeply. The fuel tanks were simple aluminum containers, characterized by thin walls and minimal protection. Unlike their American counterparts, self-sealing tanks lined with multiple layers of resilient materials, these Japanese tanks lacked any such sophisticated safety features. The broad outer layer, typically designed to swell and seal around punctures, was absent, leading to concerns about the aircraft's survivability in combat situations involving enemy fire. On the battlefield, aircraft armor and safety features played a crucial role in determining a pilot's survival odds amid the chaos of combat. One notable innovation was the development of self-sealing fuel tanks, a technological advancement that significantly enhanced the safety of aircraft operating under hostile fire. These tanks comprised a layered structure, an outer shell of hardened, vulcanized rubberized fabric, a middle layer crafted from a special type of fabric, and an interior lining designed to behave like a swelling barrier. When a projectile, such as a bullet or shrapnel, punctured the tank, the inner swelling layer would respond by sealing the breach, effectively closing the hole and preventing dangerous fuel leaks. While these self-sealing tanks marked a vital step forward in aircraft safety, they also brought certain disadvantages, including added weight, higher costs, and a reduction in overall fuel capacity. Nonetheless, their capacity to save lives in combat situations made them an indispensable feature for many aircraft during the war. The stark reality was that a single bullet striking a standard, non-sealing fuel tank could lead to catastrophic consequences: fire, explosion, and often death for the crew. In contrast, when a bullet penetrated a self-sealing tank, it would typically result only in a minor leak, which was manageable and less likely to lead to tragedy. This difference exemplified the trade-off made by some aircraft designs, where performance was sometimes prioritized over survivability. The Japanese Zero fighter was a prime example of such a trade-off, especially in its early versions. It was built for speed and agility but at the expense of pilot safety features. For every pilot flying the Zero, The understanding was clear and grim. A single hit to the fuel system meant high likelihood of death. There would be no gradual fuel loss or opportunity to nurse the aircraft home after sustaining damage. Instead, a puncture in the fuel tank almost inevitably led to ignition, violent explosions, and the destruction of the aircraft through fire. American pilots, meanwhile, observed with concern that the Zero could ignite after sustaining only minor damage. They also recognized that the Zero's design lacked basic protective measures for the pilot. Unlike American fighters, which mounted heavy steel plates behind the pilot's seat to guard against rear attacks, the Zero offered no such protection. The pilot's seat was merely a slender metal frame with a simple fabric cushion, offering minimal defense against enemy fire from behind. Furthermore, the windscreen on the Zero was composed of standard glass, probably thicker than what civilian aircraft used but still offering no ballistic protection. Conversely, American fighters increasingly incorporated armored glass, heavy, transparent plates capable of stopping small arms fire, thereby providing crucial head and chest protection for their pilots. The Zero's lightweight frame, while beneficial for agility and speed, left its pilots vulnerable to head-on attacks, which were among the most common during aerial combat. By September 20, 1942, just 2 months after a serious crash, Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders, one of the Navy's most experienced test pilots, climbed into the cockpit of the freshly repaired Zero for its first post-repair test flight. Sanders was a man whose safety depended on precise knowledge of aircraft capabilities and limitations, making him particularly suited for such a demanding task. He immediately noted how cramped the cockpit was compared to the spacious American fighters he was familiar with. The design emphasized weight reduction, sacrificing comfort and space in favor of performance. The engine roared to life smoothly, affirming Japanese engineering's strength in producing dependable power plants. Sanders taxied the aircraft carefully, aware that the Zero's narrow-track landing gear made ground handling less forgiving. As he advanced the throttle, the aircraft responded with an unexpectedly eager acceleration, swiftly reaching takeoff speed. The Zero's short takeoff run impressed him. It lifted off quickly and climbed with a surprising immediacy, leaving him momentarily startled by its agility. Once at altitude, Sanders began a series of systematic tests to evaluate the aircraft's handling. He started with basic maneuvers, level flight, gentle turns, climbs, and descents. The controls felt remarkably light and responsive, almost delicate. Small movements of the stick produced almost instant reactions from the aircraft, indicating a highly sensitive control system. After many years of flying American fighters, Sanders felt like he was transitioning from maneuvering a rugged pickup truck to driving a sleek, high-performance sports car. Encouraged by these initial results, he pushed the aircraft's capabilities further. He conducted maximum speed runs, discovering that the Zero could reach approximately 330 miles per hour, faster than the Grumman Wildcat but not by a drastic margin. Still, the aircraft's superior speed and handling made it a formidable opponent in dogfights. However, as Sanders attempted a more aggressive maneuver, a hard roll at cruise speed, the controls suddenly became stiff and unresponsive. The ailerons, which are the primary control surfaces responsible for rolling the aircraft, had all but frozen. The moment hinted at potential structural or control system limitations that could become critical during combat, raising questions about the aircraft's robustness under stress. As the aircraft executed rolling maneuvers, they gradually became sluggish, demanding increasingly forceful pushes on the control stick. Sanders conducted test after test, first attempting a roll to the left, then to the right, and observed a significant difference. The Zero was much more responsive and easier to roll to the left than it was to the right. This asymmetry in maneuverability would prove to be of critical importance for American pilots fighting against the Japanese Zero. In aerial dogfights, a Zero pilot naturally favored executing left rolls, leveraging the aircraft's superior responsiveness in that direction. Recognizing this, American fighters could strategize to exploit this weakness by deliberately forcing the Zero into right-hand rolls, where it was slower and less agile. Such a tactic could be the key to gaining the upper hand in close combat. The subsequent test was far more dangerous but yielded crucial insight. Sanders pushed the Zero into a steep dive, then sharply pulled back on the control stick to induce negative Gs, an effort to see how the aircraft would behave under such conditions. Suddenly, the engine coughed, sputtered, and then shut down completely. The cockpit became eerily silent except for the sound of rushing wind outside. At that moment, Sanders found himself flying a glider at 3,000 feet above the California coastline. Maintaining his composure, he carefully leveled the aircraft's attitude, and remarkably, the engine roared back to life. He repeated this aggressive maneuver 2 more times, each attempt producing identical results. The cause was clear. The Zero's carburetor, of the float type, relied on gravity-fed fuel delivery, a system that couldn't cope with negative G-forces. During such moments, fuel would stop flowing entirely, causing the engine to sputter and die. This discovery was of immense tactical value for American pilots. It revealed a simple yet effective method of defeating the Zero in combat. Instead of trying to outmaneuver it or turn sharply to evade, pilots should shove the stick forward assertively to dive with negative Gs. While the Zero's engine would cease functioning under these conditions due to its carburetor design, American fighters equipped with pressure-type carburetors would keep running. In the fleeting seconds of silence that followed, there would be a critical opportunity for the American pilot to increase distance and escape. Between September 20th and October 15th, Sanders completed 24 test flights, each revealing new facets of the Zero's flight characteristics. These experiments confirmed the aircraft's legendary agility but also made clear its limitations. While the Zero could execute tight turns at low speeds, below approximately 200 miles per hour, it struggled at higher velocities exceeding 250 miles per hour. In these faster regimes, the aircraft became stiff and sluggish, unable to match the speed and power of American fighters, which were heavier and more robust. The accumulated data from these tests was compiled into detailed technical reports and distributed to every fighter squadron operating in the Pacific Theater. The pilots devoured this intelligence, recognizing that it corroborated suspicions some had already begun to form. The Zero could indeed be beaten, but not by trying to fight it on its own terms. Instead, victory lay in employing tactics that imposed a different combat style, one where speed, altitude, and energy management played pivotal roles. In the broader context of tactics, Commander John Thatch had already pioneered the famous Thatch Weave before the Japanese Zero was even recovered. His maneuver involved 2 fighters flying side by side, weaving toward each other when under attack, effectively drawing pursuing Zeros into a firing corridor. This tactic was first employed in combat during the Battle of Midway on June 4, 1942, the same day the Akuden Zero was shot down and recovered. Using intelligence reports and understanding the Zero's capabilities, Thatch developed a defensive strategy that turned the tables. By continuously weaving and positioning themselves optimally, American pilots could force the Zeros into a predictable hook-shaped attack that made them easier to target. The capture and thorough study of the Zero provided invaluable data that not only validated Thach's theories but also deepened the understanding of the aircraft's peculiarities and limitations. This knowledge empowered American pilots to adapt their tactics accordingly, notably adopting the boom and zoom approach. Instead of engaging in prolonged dogfights, pilots gained altitude rapidly, then dove at high speed toward the enemy, making a single well-aimed firing pass before zooming back upward to gain altitude again. This method allowed fighters to leverage their superior speed and energy, swooping in, firing a decisive shot, then retreating before the Zero could respond effectively. The essence of this tactic was to maintain momentum, never allowing the aircraft to slow down or be trapped in a disadvantageous turn. By consistently using speed and altitude as tools of attack and retreat, American fighters could outfight the Zero, turning its supposed agility into a liability and establishing air superiority in the Pacific skies. The capture of the Japanese Zero fighter marked a turning point in aerial combat during World War II, offering the United States invaluable insights into its opponent's aircraft capabilities. The captured Zero was meticulously studied and then flown against a variety of American fighter planes, including the Wildcat, the P-38 Lightning, and the P-40 Warhawk, to analyze its performance in real combat scenarios. Each of these mock dogfights was carefully documented and examined frame by frame, providing American pilots and engineers with first-hand knowledge of the aircraft's strengths and weaknesses. Through these intense simulations, pilots began to understand that while the Zero was exceptionally swift and agile, it was far from invincible. They observed that at high speeds, the aircraft's ailerons, the control surfaces responsible for rolling maneuvers, would freeze, severely limiting its maneuverability. Additionally, the Zero's engine frequently cut out under negative G-forces, which often occurred during sharp dives or tight turns, and it simply could not match the rapid diving speeds of the heavier American fighters. Yet, perhaps most significant was a psychological revelation. The Zero was not an unstoppable war machine, but a highly skilled, specialized aircraft with exploitable vulnerabilities. This newfound knowledge drastically shifted the tactical landscape. The American pilots, who had previously felt outclassed and vulnerable in encounters with the Zero, now possessed concrete strategies to counter it. They learned to employ specific tactics that would reveal the aircraft's weaknesses, enabling them to gain an advantage in combat. The understanding that the Zero's ailerons would lock at speeds over 200 knots, for example, led to the development of new training routines emphasizing boom and zoom tactics, where a fighter would strike quickly and then climb away before the Zero could respond effectively. Information about these weaknesses spread rapidly across the fleet, transforming the way American fighters engaged the enemy. Fighter squadrons incorporated these insights into their training programs, ensuring that new pilots learned these tactics long before they encountered Zero fighters in combat. Veteran pilots, having already faced the aircraft in battle, shared their experiences with a sense of relief and vindication, knowing that their sacrifices had contributed to this vital knowledge. Their early losses, once seen as tragic and perhaps futile, now appeared to be necessary steps toward developing effective countermeasures. One noteworthy figure, Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders, documented these findings in his official report. He explained that during performance tests comparable to Navy evaluations, the first flight of the captured Zero unveiled specific weaknesses that could be exploited through proper tactics. He pointed out that the ailerons would seize up at speeds exceeding 200 knots, drastically reducing the aircraft's agility during high-speed rolls and requiring considerable force on the stick to maneuver. This intelligence quickly became widespread among U.S. Navy and Marine fighter crews. The dissemination of this knowledge transformed combat strategies across the fleet. Pilots refined their tactics, adopting a more cautious and calculated approach that exploited the Zero's limitations. This intelligence provided a psychological boost, fostering hope and confidence among American fighters who now believed that victory was achievable against a seemingly superior adversary. Veterans such as Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Walsh, a Marine pilot credited with 21 confirmed kills and awarded the Medal of Honor, later reflected on the significance of the captured aircraft. He stated that understanding how to handle a Zero on one's tail, knowledge gained directly from the insights gleaned from Koga's aircraft, had saved his life multiple times. The tactical intelligence derived from analyzing the Zero contributed to his survival during dangerous encounters that might otherwise have been fatal. Fighter ace William Leonard, who would eventually retire as a rear admiral and tally 6 confirmed aerial victories, also considered the captured Zero a critical discovery. He remarked that, to his knowledge, no other captured aircraft had revealed so many crucial secrets in such a short time, especially at a point when this knowledge was desperately needed to improve American combat effectiveness. Historian Masatake Okumiya, a retired lieutenant general in the Japan Air Self-Defense Force, recognized the importance of the findings from the Akuden Zero, describing them as devastating for the Japanese military. He compared the impact of these revelations to the loss at the Battle of Midway, acknowledging how the insights gained from the American examination of the Zero altered the course of the war in the Pacific. Furthermore, the influence of the Akuden Zero extended beyond tactical doctrines. American aircraft designers dedicated intense efforts to analyzing the wreckage, seeking to understand precisely what made the Zero so maneuverable. By the time the Americans began designing a suitable replacement for the Wildcat, such as the F-6F Hellcat, they incorporated insights from the captured aircraft. The design of the Hellcat was already being influenced by intelligence reports from pilots who had fought Zeros at Coral Sea and Midway, guiding decisions on wing structure, armament, and overall aerodynamics. The first prototype of the F-6F Hellcat, designated the F-6F-3, made its maiden flight on October 3 of the year 1942, just a few weeks after Sanders's testing of the Akuden Zero. The data obtained from in the course of its development, the Hellcat incorporated a comprehensive understanding of the Zero's weaknesses and strengths, building upon the lessons learned from studying that iconic Japanese fighter. Its design prioritized speed and agility, allowing it to reach a maximum velocity of around 380 miles per hour, making it faster than many contemporaries and, notably, capable of outpacing the Zero. Furthermore, the Hellcat possessed a rate of climb that was either on par with or superior to that of the Zero, enabling it to gain altitude quickly during combat scenarios. This aircraft also retained vital protective features such as extensive armor plating and self-sealing fuel tanks, which were crucial for survivability in intense dogfights. The design aimed to confront the Zero on more advantageous terms, unlike the more vulnerable Wildcat, which struggled against Japan's premier fighter. In addition to these improvements, the Hellcat's architects deliberately exploited known vulnerabilities of the Zero, especially its difficulties in high-speed combat. The aircraft was equipped with a powerful Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine, generating approximately 2,000 horsepower, more than twice the output of the Zero's engine. This substantial power reserve enabled American pilots to employ tactics like boom and zoom, where they could dive from higher altitudes, strike their target with considerable force, and then climb away to safety, thus controlling the terms of engagement with confidence and flexibility. The significance of the Hellcat was underscored in November of 1943 when the Akuden Zero, an intact Japanese fighter captured during the Aleutian Campaign, was showcased at Washington National Airport as a war trophy during ceremonies marking the 25th anniversary of American airway and mail service. This aircraft, which had previously inflicted terror upon Allied forces in the Pacific, allowed thousands of Americans to witness firsthand the adversary their servicemen faced in the skies. Its sleek and menacing appearance conveyed a predatory aura, projecting danger and lethal capability. Yet, few observers realized at the time that the Zero embodied a radically different design philosophy, one that prioritized range and agility over the armor and protection that became standard in American fighters. By 1944, the Zero was phased back to North Island for use as a training aircraft. Newly trained pilots had the opportunity to learn about the Zero's operational strengths and weaknesses by flying against it in controlled combat exercises. An especially valuable addition to the